For the longest time, the toughest part of VGC wasn't figuring out your 6 Pokemon or clicking the right moves, it was getting your Pokemon on cartridge. Between RNG abuse, soft resetting, or attending obscure Japanese events, building a team was a long and arduous process. This is no longer the case. In Sword and Shield, almost any random Pokemon can be turned into a competitive behemoth. In this series, we aim to prove just that. Every week, we'll get 3 Pokemon from Wonder Trade. We'll put together a team from just our Wonder Traded Pokemon and take on the Battle Stadium ladder and online tournaments with the eventual goal of top cutting a VGC Regional Championship. Welcome to Wonder Trade Topping. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Wonder Trade Topping. This is episode 2 of the series. If you missed episode 1, you should definitely check it out. It sort of lays the groundwork to the entire series, but also if that video, which should be linked right around here, if that video gets 500 likes, I will bring our Wonder Traded team to either Players Cup 5 or the first regional of the year, whichever one comes first. And so I guess jumping right into the actual Wonder Trading, I guess the Pokemon that I want the most going into this are probably like a fire type. There's a bunch of good fire types that we could possibly get, namely like Incineroar, Cinderace, Charizard. We saw a lot of starters get traded last episode, and I think that might be a common trend. But there's also a lot of other good fire types that aren't legendaries, like Volcarona, for example, is a great redirection Pokemon that can do some damage, or like Arcanine is sort of a discount Incineroar if we can't get that. So there's a lot of good Pokemon there. We were really running into a lot of ice types early on, and so we didn't really have many ice resists other than our Inteleon. Having a better fire type would be, or having a fire type in general would be really good. Also, an electric type would be cool. Maybe a bulkier water type might be good so we can play a little bit more defensively. A lot of good Pokemon, but I guess let's just jump right into the first one. And so this one does come in a Pokeball, so maybe a starter, right? Like that's what you kind of expect, but no, it is actually a Phantump. Okay, so that's cool. So that's actually got some pretty good shenanigans. First off, it is a second grass type, so we might not be running it just because we already have the Rillaboom, and the Rillaboom is probably about as good as it's going to get in that sort of typing, but it's got some cool things it can do, namely like it has a Forest's Curse, which turned, or the Trevenant has a Forest's Curse, which turns things into Ghost type. No, sorry, it turns things into a Grass type, and that's really cool if you have like powerful max Airstream users, powerful max Flare users, but we don't really have that yet. We basically use it. It's still a good Pokemon. Like it's got some pretty cool support moves in Trick Room. It's got really good coverage. Ghost Grass is great coverage. It can actually take advantage of grassy terrain by hitting hard with grass type moves. So maybe we use it, but I guess it really depends on the rest of the Pokemon that we get. The next 2 Pokemon are going to come in Ultra Balls, so I am curious what that's going to turn into. Again, really hoping for a strong fire type to round out the team, but Rhyhorn is honestly is actually really good. I'm very happy with that, just because it evolves into Rhyperior. And Rhyperior is another Pokemon that sees a lot of VGC success as a powerful Trick Room attacker. It has usually has a weakness policy with Solid Rock, but it can also run Lightning Rod potentially. I'm not sure what ability is the hidden ability off the top of my head, but definitely can do a lot of damage, power through teams in Trick Room if we get a good Trick Room setter. We don't really have one of those yet, so this might not be the most viable. We might still be better off running Steelix until we get one of those, but in Trick Room to do damage, it's really hard to beat. Rhyperior is one of the best like non-restricted Pokemon, non-legendary Pokemon that we can get to fill that role. Also, we didn't really have many flying resists, and so we kind of were very susceptible to Landorus, and so that's another thing that this can do is kind of beat Landorus with Ice Punch and with Solid Rock. But yo, this is also really good. This is a Ghastly as our third and final Pokemon for the week. So that of course evolves into Gengar, and Gengar did see some success in the beginning of VGC 2020 as a next to like Bisharp, for example. Where it could click Sludge Wave, it could click Icy Wind. It had a lot of good offensive options as well as support options once again. It's also just got a good speed tier. It's got a base 110 speed stat. And so using Gengar is definitely something that I think we're going to do this week for sure. Like it's too good a Pokemon to pass up. We did get a couple Ghost types there, so we have some options for a typing that we didn't otherwise have access to. But, you know, all in all, like not fantastic Pokemon. Like none of these Pokemon I expect to use come the end of the series. Maybe Rhyperior really could put in work in like a hard Trick Room team, but maybe not the other Pokemon nearly as much. I guess looking over this, Grassly, I think it only has one ability. I think it always has Levitate. Gengar always has Curse Body, but nothing special about this one. But I think Gengar is the most competitively viable immediately. It also does learn Trick Room, so maybe we could do some sort of a funny Trick Room strategy. I think one of the coolest strategies that I remember watching when I started playing back in 2014 was at Worlds, where someone ran a Focus Sash Gengar with Trick Room and a Tyranitar, and they would lead the Tyranitar, click Trick Room with Gengar to set up for the Tyranitar, and then go down to Sandstorm, giving them the free switch in. So they were playing 3v4, but got a really powerful attack off. I thought that was really cool, and maybe we can do something like that, except we don't have a Tyranitar, we only have a Rhyperior there. Moving on to the next Pokemon, we do see the Rhyhorn. It is a Jolly nature, so maybe it isn't the best. So it looks like it's Jolly nature, so it might have a higher speed stat, which isn't great. I guess we'll see if it is able, it might still have a low IV, right? We can always change the nature. And it looks like it is just an in-game Pokemon caught from the Hoenn. So, that might still be a pretty good choice there if it has a low speed stat for Trick Room. But also, Rhyperior, generally, it doesn't really matter what it's like. It doesn't have that speed tier that makes it really want to run min speed. There are a ton of things that are going to underspeed it, even if it has a higher speed IV. I think Hard Trick Room could definitely be an option eventually, because there are a lot of good Pokemon that we can run in Trick Room if we get the Pokemon for it, right? But we do need to have Indeedee Hatterene, I think, to really make that viable. But yeah, and so going on to the last Pokemon, we just see Phantump. This one looks like it is a reject because it's adamant nature, and the ability is Natural Cure. So again, I'm not sure off the top of my head what the hidden ability is. I guess we'll find that out real soon when we get into team building. But I think that the ability that you want, it might be Harvest, it might be Natural Cure, one of the two. I think it has Frisk as well. I think it has all three abilities are pretty good, but Frisk is the one that's probably most competitively viable in doubles because having that information is really valuable. But yeah, I guess those are the three Pokemon that we got this week. So hopefully we see some changes this week. I guess you'll find out in about 10 seconds, and let's just hop right into it. Okay, I am back, and I have put together the team that we are going to be using this week. On one hand, it was easier than last week because this is just our 6 best Pokemon. Steelix, Aggron, Jigglypuff, and Trevenant are not as good as these Pokemon. Trevenant actually might be, but it's really hard to fit on a team with a Gengar and a Rillaboom. It also kind of needs Trick Room to function, and while it can set it up itself, it just doesn't really have a great way to make sure it doesn't get just, KO'd. Steelix also could probably be on the team because it is a Steel type, and we really need a Steel type, but it was so underwhelming last episode that I felt like it never got to do anything. And Rhyperior just does a lot of the same things much more offensively, at least in terms of ground coverage. So I guess starting with Rhyperior, this is the strongest Dynamax Pokemon we have, provided we can get Trick Room up. It's not as good outside of Trick Room, but it still can definitely do damage. I think in general, you want your Life Orb on your strongest Dynamax Pokemon, and in this case, the alternative of a weakness policy wasn't really feasible because we don't have something like a Dusclops that can self-proc it after Trick Room has gone up. We're wasting too many turns if we set a Trick Room with Gengar, switch into Inteleon, Ice Shard with Inteleon or Mamoswine, and then we just need to do damage right away because we only have 5 turns to Trick Room. And our Rhyperior does have a speed IV of 8, which means it is actually a pretty feasible Trick Room sweeper. I don't think that it misses out on underspeeding anything that it would otherwise. And last, Hammer Arm is our coverage move, but I didn't know what else to put there. At least if nothing else, it drops our speed below Glastrier's speed if it comes down to it. The other new Pokemon is Gengar, and it's our Trick Room setter. It was almost going to be a Focus Sash Trevenant, but I decided if we're going to put a Focus Sash on a Pokemon, it might as well be a Gengar, just because in general it does more than Trevenant in terms of damage and in terms of coverage. Poison Ghost is just really good coverage in general. And then Hypnosis is there because I think we're going to find ourselves with Gengar on the field, not doing very much in Trick Room, and we don't want it on the field in those situations, but our opponent really has no reason to target it. Now, granted, we are still in Pokeball ranks, so they might still target it anyways, but if they don't, then we just get to spam Hypnosis, put things to sleep, and force our opponent to respect Gengar on the field. But also, that being said, it probably is just going to be doing damage with its 2 stab moves, and our opponents are going to be forced to target it. It's just if they come into a situation where there's an opposing Rhyperior on the field where it's not doing anything, we might need it to, actually threaten things. Also, it's our only grass resist other than Rillaboom, and we kind of don't want Rillaboom to be our grass resist because it powers up grass type Pokemon. And so even though it doesn't really do much into like Venusaur, it at least can click Hypnosis, and that's something. And so, yeah, speaking of grass resists, Rillaboom is now a Assault Vest. It doesn't need to do as much damage now because we have like 6 real Pokemon on the team, but it also needs to hit opposing Rillaboom because otherwise we will lose to opposing Rillaboom, and that's what U-Turn is for. Surfetched is also exactly the same as last time, except it's not because I forgot to EV train it last time, so that's funny. But Mamoswine is now a Rindo Berry set, partially because I can't use the Life Orb, and the Focus Sash is just so high value on this team that it definitely can't go on Mamoswine. It is trained to live in attack from non-Life Orb Gmax Venusaur, and also live a turn of Vine Lash damage without Dynamaxing, making it a really good option against Sun teams. Also a little better into Rillaboom. Can actually deal with those Pokemon now. I am also just really compensating for the lack of a Fire type, so I hope we get one soon. Moves are pretty standard, and then Inteleon, I just felt like it needed to be on the team as a Water type, but I really didn't know what set to run, so I looked on Picolytics, and apparently the Mad Lads who are running Inteleon in Series 9 have decided that Scope Lens Sniper Inteleon is the set that you're supposed to run. It uses Snipe Shot, so it crits half the time, and then because of Sniper, it does 2.25x damage instead of 1.5x damage like a normal crit, and I think that sounds kind of bad. But I figured I'd try it out. I have nothing to lose. I don't expect to bring Inteleon that many games, but we just need a Water type because hitting Fire types is important. Again, we do have a Rhyperior to do that, but like, I also figure we need some sort of speed control and some sort of fast mode. That's why Icy Wind is there. I think we need like Surfetched and Mamoswine to be able to outspeed things, especially if we're playing like a more mid-rangey team that can operate in Trick Room, a team that can counter our pretty linear Trick Room strategy, either by stopping it from getting set up or just stopping Rhyperior from sweeping. And without a Focus Sash, this isn't living a turn anyways, so I figure it might as well do damage on the turn that it can, you know? And so that's the team. It's definitely got some holes in it, but I think it also has the power level to actually out-damage teams if it gets into position. So I guess let's see what it can do. So we're starting this episode in Pokeball Tier 4. We went 4-1 last episode, leaving us 1 win away from that coveted legendary Pokemon, and I'm hoping to get it right off the bat. Now, our first game is against what looks like an in-game team. It does have double evolution. It has a Frostlass, which we saw a lot of last episode, but the combination of Snorlax, Dusclops, Rhyperior is actually really scary. This team can put a lot of work in if it gets Trick Room up. And so I decide that I'm going to deny Trick Room at all costs, and if the Espeon and Frostlass beat me, so be it. I don't respect those Pokemon nearly as much, and I think that my Pokemon in the back, which are Mamoswine and Rillaboom, can just out-damage those. And so they end up leading their Dusclops and their Snorlax, which does indicate that they want to set up Trick Room, into our Surfetched and our Rhyperior. And so my game plan here is just immediately go for a knockoff into Dusclops and then KO it with Rhyperior after Eviolite goes away. And we do see pressure proc, so maybe this isn't the most competitively trained team. That is obviously just worse than Frisk, because we don't get to see our items, and the knockoff does a lot more than I expect it to. But they do immediately go for a Belly Drum, revealing that they have an odd HP stat instead of an even HP stat. So if they had a 50% Berry or a Gluttony ability, they would not get their Berry. And so that is very silly, again, indicating this might not be the most competitively trained team. The Rhyperior does just outright KO the Dusclops after the knockoff, and they Dynamax the Snorlax, even though it is only a 51% health in front of a fighting type, and so, to no one's surprise, the Surfetch does KO the Snorlax. Now, we did get the critical hit because of our leak, which has a 50% chance of happening. They also just were at 50% instead of 75. You know, if they had a Wiki Berry with Gluttony, and we also didn't get a critical hit, then maybe they live it and they start doing some big damage, but instead, they just go down immediately. They go for a Dark Pulse and actually flinch the Rhyperior, but Dark Pulse is not the move that is any good on Umbreon, and so I kind of feel bad because at this point I'm just, bullying someone who doesn't really know much about VGC here. But the Frostlass goes for Hail, and I thought that was really funny. I never saw that coming. I was actually just laughing while I was playing this game, and I actually did remember this game, unlike last time when I faced the Frostlass, that I don't have to go for Max Darkness. I can go for Max Knuckle, and it is super effective because of our Scrappy ability. And so that KO's Frostlass. It did take a couple more turns to KO Umbreon, but I did in fact end up winning that game. And so moving on to the second game, now that we've got our 5th win, we're going to try to move it all the way to Great Ball with our next 4 games. And this game looks like it's going to be a lot more competitive. We see the Dragapult Colossal, and that can really just power through our team, we don't have a ton of great response. We have a ton of ways to KO Colossal, but we don't have a ton of ways to stop it from KOing our Pokemon. And so my game plan against Dragapult Colossal is to lead Inteleon, and even if they have redirection, we can still Snipe Shot and immediately threaten the Colossal. And if they lead Dragapult, we can also lead Gengar to try to set up Trick Room. And they can't stop both the Snipe Shot and the Trick Room from going up. And so I decide that's the most consistent way of playing this game, and then hopefully Rhyperior in back can clean up the game. So they do lead the Colossal Dragapult, and they do immediately Dynamax their Colossal, getting the Steam Engine with Surf, getting to +2 special attack, and +6 stages of speed. And so this is obviously really scary if something goes wrong, but they actually make maybe the worst play possible, and they go for a max Overgrowth into Inteleon. Now that button does say super effective, but it is not max Volcalith, which would have started the residual damage. Instead, they set up Grassy Terrain, which actually starts giving us HP back, which is obviously really, really valuable for us because they just broke our Gengar's Focus Sash. And so that is maybe a symptom of being in beginner rank or Pokeball rank, where they don't respect how valuable Gmax Volcalith really can be. That residual damage is so centralizing to this metagame right now, and they just chose not to get it up. And so, of course, Trick Room goes up, the Rhyperior comes in and immediately goes for a Dynamax, and here I was trying to figure out, okay, how does this go wrong? Obviously, I'm going to click Max Quake into Colossal, and I thought of two ways. The first is the Ally Switch, of course, which we did just see, and the second is if they Max Guarded and switched to Togekiss, which would have forced us to attack the Togekiss with Rhyperior, not attack the Colossal, and the Colossal could potentially KO the Rhyperior with another Max Overgrowth, or set up Volcalith, one of the two. And so my solution, of course, goes for Max Quake and then a Hypnosis, and that will cover both of those options 60% of the time, as well as just hitting the Dragapult potentially. I wasn't really worried about KOing the Dragapult with the Gengar, even though I had the opportunity to. I said I want to cover for the ways I can lose the game. And so they do get the turn 1 Wake, however, and they go for the Max Guard, meaning my Protect and my Sludge Bomb, which again, covering for that Togekiss, does go into a Max Guard, and they get a Will-O-Wisp off onto the Rhyperior, meaning we are now burned. We're doing a lot less damage, but their Dynamax does end, and so because of that, despite the burn, the Max Quake is going to outright KO this Colossal. It also means that we get our second Spadef boost on the Gengar, and our Sludge Bomb once again gets redirected from that Colossal that could have potentially switched into Togekiss into the Dragapult slot, picking up a second knockout. And so now they bring in their last two Pokemon, which and one more thing is that we actually keep getting HP, right? And so Gengar's Focus Sash, it is back. And also we have 2 stages of special defense. And so their last two Pokemon are the Venusaur and the Togekiss. And so here, this is the last turn of Trick Room, our Dynamax is over, and there's one more turn of Grassy Terrain. And so I go for a Rock Slide, just immediately trying to get damage onto that Togekiss, also the Venusaur as much as possible, and we do just over half HP, which means that we could KO if we get another one off. The Venusaur goes for an Earth Power, which reveals the Life Orb and also doesn't KO because of our 2 stages of special defense, but also if that was a Volcalith instead of a Max Overgrowth, that would have KO'd the Gengar, they would have gotten another attack off, and the Togekiss does have to get the critical hit, Air Slash, to KO the Gengar, but the Grassy Terrain expires, the Trick Room expires, and we get to bring in Mamoswine, which does hit both these things super effectively, and because the Grassy Terrain expires, it means that our Rindo Berry allows us to live any attack from this Venusaur. They go for a Follow Me, we go for an Ice Shard to just immediately KO this Togekiss, and the Venusaur, instead of going for a Grass move like I expected it to, actually goes for a Sleep Powder, and this was actually pretty smart, because that was their one way to win. They didn't know it. The Grass move would have KO'd potentially most Mamoswines, but the Sleep Powder does dodge. They needed a Sleep Powder to hit, followed by a 3-turn sleep as they KO'd the Rhyperior and then the Mamoswine, but we didn't have to worry about that. They dodged the Sleep Powder, and we hit our Hypnosis, and because of that, we won our second game of the day. Going into our third game of the day, we face Deck in rank 5, and they, sometimes you go from facing Dragapult, Colossal, Venusaur, Togekiss, just 4 of the best Pokemon in VGC, to facing the team with an Appleton and a Copperajah on it. But the scary thing on this team is the Glastrier. We don't have great answers to it because we don't have a Steel type on the team. Our only Ice resist is Inteleon, which is obviously not very bulky. And so I decide, again, I just have to deny Trick Room from going up. If Trick Room goes up and Glastrier is positioned, we are going to be in for a world of hurt. And so I decided to lead Mamoswine and Gengar because their 2 Trick Room setters are Slowbro and Articuno, and this threatens both of them. And so they do end up leading the Slowbro as well as the Glastrier, 2 of the Pokemon that we were scared of, and they immediately Dynamax the Glastrier. And so I was thinking, they can't actually KO any of our Pokemon, but it turns out that the Slowbro goes for a Protect, which makes this a lot more difficult because I went for a double target. I just wanted to deny Trick Room from going up. And so we just basically whiff the turn, don't do any damage at all, and they go for a Max Hailstorm. And this goes into the Gengar, and so even though it couldn't KO because of Focus Sash, and it doesn't get the Chilling Neigh boost, it does still KO the Gengar. This isn't ideal, obviously. I would have liked to have had more Pokemon than not, but the real key is they didn't get the attack boost, which would have made this a lot more difficult. And so the Gengar does go down to the Hail Chip, and I bring in the Surfetch'd. I just have to go for a Dynamax right now. I need to get damage off into whatever the switches into the Slowbro, which I didn't really predict. I didn't need to predict it. Instead, I went for the high horsepower and then a max airstream into that slot. And so the high horsepower does go into the Appleton, does do very little damage, but now more importantly, the Surfetch'd can live any attack the Glastrier can throw out. As the max airstream knocks it out, the max airstream also allows the Mamoswine to outspeed a potential Articuno, switch in, and ensure that we can always take a knockout onto whatever comes in. Onto that slot. Now, we get the speed boost, and then the Glastrier, its Appleton goes down, and then the Glastrier goes for a Max Knuckle, giving it that stage of attack, but also doesn't do very much damage to this Mamoswine. The Mamoswine lives pretty comfortably, and the Glastrier, that being said, is very scary now that it has the attack boost. I really need it not to KO this Surfetch'd, but I also need it not to be in Trick Room, because if it's in Trick Room and it has multiple attack boosts, this game goes south very quickly. They once again see that I am going to double target the Slowbro, really want to deny Trick Room from going up, and they Protect as I high horsepower into the Protect, and then I also Max Knuckle into the Protect. I figured here the Glastrier could be weakness policy, and I didn't want to let it get the weakness policy. Now, if I KO the Slowbro and then got a Max Knuckle off into Glastrier, and I'm facing basically like 1 1/3 Pokemon with my 2 Pokemon, and one of which being a +2 attack Mamoswine, I figured I was in an okay spot. A +1 attack Mamoswine. I figured I could deal with it, but if I just didn't KO the Slowbro and I got a Max Knuckle off into the Glastrier and it got weakness policy, I might have been in a bad spot. But instead, I would go Max Knuckle, do very little damage to the Slowbro. They go for a Max Knuckle back into the Mamoswine, get their 2nd attack boost and their 3rd attack boost from KOing, but their Glastrier is just not surviving another turn, no matter what. They would have to switch out for that to have any chance of happening because we have a Rhyperior and a +2 Surfetch'd on the field now. And so the Surfetch'd, a +1 Surfetch'd on the field. The Surfetch'd goes for a Max Knuckle, outright KOing the Glastrier. The Slowbro went for a double Protect and did fail it. I think that they might have been going for, I think they might have been Assault Vest because they didn't protect the Glastrier as well. And that was the thing that I was pretty clearly targeting with the Surfetch'd. And the Rhyperior, now at 1 stage of attack boost, easily KOs the Slowbro with the high horsepower. And so that pretty much cleans up the game. Now the game's pretty much over. They have 1 more Pokemon left. And it is the Copperajah. And instead of forfeiting or just like clicking an attacking move, they end up going for a Protect. And that really pisses me off because there's no reason to go for Protect. You know the game is over. I know the game is over. There's no feasible way for you to win this game. Just forfeit or just click an attack and let me take the last KO. There's no reason to elongate it and try to play for like a disconnect win. I think that's really scummy. But that's just my 2 cents. We did end up picking up the win anyways, just a couple turns later after they went for as many Protects as they could try to get. And we go into our next game against a team that also has a Copperajah on it. This team, however, is very clearly a hard Trick Room team. It has Indeedee Hatterene as the primary lead, I thought. And so I really wanted to stop the Indeedee Hatterene from going up. And so I lead Inteleon, which can ignore Indeedee's redirection with Snipe Shot and also Rhyperior. And my goal here is if I Snipe Shot the Hatterene, ignoring redirection, get a Rock Slide off potentially, which also ignores redirection because it's a spread move, then I could take 2 KOs. But instead, the lead is Indeedee Porygon 2. So now I don't think I ever pick up 2 KOs from the situation. The Indeedee gets its Psychic Surge ability and then also reveals that it is a Psychic Seed, which means that it gets 1 stage of special defense boost. Then the Porygon 2's ability procs, and it is download, of course, getting the stage of special attack. So they actually have a pretty decent amount of damage output, but I decided that I can't stop Trick Room from going up, so I need to stall it out as much as possible, and then win win in a way where they can't get the second Trick Room up without losing too many Pokemon while the first Trick Room goes up. And so I switch into the Rillaboom, immediately making the Indeedee do a lot less damage, but also threatening Fake Out, so they would have to Dynamax to really do damage. I also figure the more turns I can Fake Out, I can Protect, I can force Porygon 2 to click Recover, the more turns that they aren't doing damage. And so I target the Porygon 2 and not the Indeedee, just hoping to force it to click Recover sooner rather than later, at least during these Trick Room turns. The Porygon 2 does go for a Trick Room, and I immediately switch out the Inteleon into the Rhyperior, because that just does a lot more in Trick Room. The Indeedee goes for a Protect, but I was really not interested in hitting the Indeedee. The Indeedee isn't actually doing anything. I go for a Fake Out into this Porygon 2, just immediately trying to pressure it into clicking Recover. But here, instead of going to continue to put that offensive pressure, I actually go for a Protect, reading into the Ice Beam into that slot. The Indeedee goes for a Follow Me, and I decide my Rillaboom needs to get out of there. But first, the Porygon 2 thankfully does attack into the Rhyperior and not into the Rillaboom. That would have been a pretty big punish to my play. But the Rillaboom does go for a U-turn into the Indeedee, switching out, doing a decent amount of damage into that pretty physically bulky Indeedee, all things considered. It only did about 45%. But the Inteleon comes back in with 2 turns of Trick Room left, and I decide here that I get to attack, and then I get to Protect. And that's going to solve the Trick Room, while also doing as much damage as possible into Porygon 2. If the Porygon 2 doesn't recover, then it goes down to the Snipe Shot, but they choose not to recover. They actually go for the Ice Beam, doing big damage into this Rhyperior, and bringing us down to 8 HP. Now, the Indeedee goes for a Psychic, not into the Rhyperior, instead into the Inteleon, which brings it down to about half, and the Snipe Shot picks up the Porygon 2 on the penultimate turn of Trick Room. And so, they get to switch in a Pokemon. Now that the Porygon 2 faints, they finally get to actually do damage in Trick Room like they want to do for so long, and the Dragalge is very clearly their Trick Room sweeper of choice. It has the ability, Adaptability, the same as Porygon Z. So its stab attacks, same type attacks, are doubled in power instead of 1.5x in power. And that means Poison and Dragon moves are really, really powerful. And so here I realize Rhyperior is going down no matter what I do because of Life Orb recoil, so I get the Rock Slide off on the last turn of Trick Room. Inteleon gets to Protect after the Indeedee gets knocked out by this Life Orb. And the Inteleon, of course, protects on the last turn of Trick Room, hoping to get an attack off after Trick Room expires. They go for a Max Lightning, which is actually, not doing very much damage through Protect. It does about half. The Max Wormwind would have done as much damage through Protect because of the Adaptability boost. And so, a little bit curious there, but they did set up their own terrain rather than the grassy terrain. And they bring in the Dracovish as I bring in my Sirfetch'd. So here, I am really scared that the Dracovish is Scarf. That is the standard item on Dracovish outside of Sand teams. And I decide that I need to protect the Sirfetch'd so that I can Fake Out the Dracovish the next turn. And with my Rillaboom that, of course, I have in back after they KO the Inteleon. Thankfully, they went for the Vicious Rend into the Sirfetch'd and not into the Inteleon, because the Ice Beam now goes into the Dragalge, does a decent amount of damage. The Dragalge is obviously the thing that's going to do the most damage on their team, now that especially has a weakness policy. And they go for another Max Lightning, picking up the KO on Inteleon and allowing me to bring in the Rillaboom. But if that Dragalge had Max Wormwinded the Sirfetch'd, I was actually in a really bad spot, because then the Dracovish was able to KO it. So I think in hindsight, I should have went for a Max Guard instead of just a outright Protect, because realistically, I was never going to make full use of my 3 Max turns. Now, I do go ahead and max the Sirfetch'd here, and I decide that I don't actually need to target down the Dracovish. I just need to make sure the Dragalge doesn't get an attack off at all costs. The Sirfetch'd can't actually KO... the Dracovish can't KO the Sirfetch'd, and so the Airstream goes off into the Dragalge and actually outright KOs the Dragalge. Now, I did go for a Wood Hammer into the Dragalge as well. In case I didn't get that critical hit, I might not have KO'd. And if the Dragalge managed to get an attack off into basically anything, I had lost the game. So I figured I need to get a Wood Hammer off into the Dragalge, hopefully picking up a KO, even though it is 4x weak. And instead, of course, the Brave Bird, the Max Airstream, just gets the critical hit, gets the knockout. The Wood Hammer does 90% to the Dracovish, which allows me to clean up the game very easily with a Grassy Glide. And so that finishes up our 4th game of the day. We have 4 games in and 4 wins. So that is really exciting. We are very, very close to tiering up to Great Ball rank. And we have our 5th game of the day against Ryan. And so I'm really hoping that we can make this undefeated for the day, putting us 1 win away from another legendary Pokemon next week. Now, this team is actually really scary. This is the team that Damiano Lababera used to win one of the Victory Road qualifiers and then also did very well in the Victory Road Invitational with. There's a team report up on their website, Victory Road's website. And I decide that, Porygon Z Clefairy or Regieleki Clefairy are the main leads. I actually almost timed out there, and I was really scared. I was not sure if I locked in my Pokemon in time, and so I was going into team preview very nervous that I didn't accidentally lead the wrong Pokemon because of timing out. But thankfully, I did get the leads off. I did manage to lead my Gengar and Rhyperior into the Porygon Z and Rillaboom. And so that actually threw a wrench in my plans. I didn't get to just set up Trick Room like I wanted to. Instead, the Rillaboom was threatening my Rhyperior a little too much. So I had to switch into my own Rillaboom to try to stop it from going down. And the Rillaboom does click Fake Out into my Rillaboom, my former Rhyperior, rather than doing something like a Grassy Glide to proc a weakness policy. I just realized that Trick Room isn't actually that high value in the situation. I need the Rillaboom to go down before my Trick Room Sweeper can really do big damage. And thankfully, the Sludge Bomb gets the poison, which is really, really clutch. And so the Max Darkness goes into Gengar, bringing us down to Focus Sash. And here I decide, if I can KO the Rillaboom and get Trick Room up, that would be insane. And they can only do two things here. They can either, if I fake out their Rillaboom, they can either KO the Rillaboom with a Max Strike, or they can KO the Gengar with a Max Darkness, which means that either they spend 2 turns KOing a Gengar with their Dynamax, or they got the KO, but I get Trick Room up, and I also picked up the KO on Rillaboom, putting Rhyperior in a prime position to sweep the game. And so thankfully, they target the Rillaboom. The Fake Out didn't actually quite pick up the damage onto their Rillaboom, so it lives with a sliver of health, and this is where the poison was really, really important, because the poison does slightly more than the grassy terrain recovery. And so the Rillaboom actually goes down to the poison chip after all of our Pokemon get the grassy terrain. And so after the Rillaboom goes down, we bring in our Pokemon, and my Pokemon is, of course, Rhyperior, and they curiously bring in the Regieleki, which is in Trick Room, and they also knew I had a Rhyperior in back. So the Regieleki realistically wasn't doing very much in that situation. But, of course, I maxed the Rhyperior. Here, I think I got... this was a bad play. I think I was never supposed to target the Regieleki, but, I did so anyways. And so the Regieleki, of course, protects. It wasn't really doing anything anyways. I was probably just supposed to double target the Porygon Z. But, the Regieleki takes a lot of damage through Protect because I do have that Life Orb despite protecting. And I never get punished because I hit my Hypnosis into Porygon Z. Not that it was doing very much, even if it didn't. Because, I was getting the attack off. I was getting a Max Quake to get the Spadef boost. It was at best KOing the Gengar. And then I would just KO the next turn. But they switch out the Regieleki here into their Clefairy, which I thought they were supposed to bring in last turn anyways. So I was a little curious there. But the Max Knuckle comes off into the Porygon Z. Now that it is no longer Dynamax, it does just outright get the knockout. We did get a critical hit there as well. So maybe that played a role as well. But we get the attack boost as well. And realistically, the Clefairy and the Regieleki are not going to do enough to KO the Rhyperior. The Gengar gets a Sludge Bomb off and, does big damage. They bring the Regieleki back in and immediately concede. And not only did we manage to pick up our 5th win of the day, but we also managed to rank up to Great Ball tier, which is really exciting, so much closer to Master Ball rank, and also 1 win away from picking up a 2nd legendary Pokemon 2 weeks from now, along with the one we get next week. All right, 5-0. That was great. That was a heck of a run. I think part of the success from this week was just embracing the best of 1 format. Trick Room Gengar just put in absolute work. Rhyperior also put in work, so that was just 2 incredible new Pokemon. And that 5-0 record means we get a new legendary Pokemon in the next episode to power up our team. We're also 1 win away from getting the legendary after that. So we get to spin the wheel, get something completely random, and of course we also still get 3 more Wonder Trades next week as well. I'm really excited for that. I'm gonna go edit this video and then immediately jump into recording next week. I hope you all enjoyed this, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you all later.